Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about data analytics and specifically an important trend in data analytics, which is making analytics tools and the results available to all employees, not just the C-suite. Really, some big changes here. To discuss that, I'm joined by Philip Cooper, Vice President of Product Management at Tableau. Phil, very good to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure, James. Great to be here.
I think we've come a long way with data analytics, to be sure. But I think we're probably not quite there yet, as I see it. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like many companies are still struggling to really fully implement analytics, and there's plenty of executives out there who are still running things by by gut instinct. I mean, where do you see we are with the adoption of analytics these days?
Yeah, I've been around the block for a while, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. We got some numbers back from IDC recently suggesting that CEOs are looking for the vast majority of them, I think it was 83%, are looking to their organizations to be data driven. And the reality is that only about 30% of employees identify as being ready and comfortable with data and analytics. So I think there is a big white space still, absolutely.
Well, I think it's interesting. Perhaps not all the executives are on board with analytics, but what about that trend, towards making analytics available to all the employees? It's really interesting because there was a time several years ago at this point where really analytics and the metrics and sort of the knowledge and power of that really existed mainly in the C-suite. But now there's this trend like, no, we want to have all the employees empowered by analytics. What is your sense of how that trend is unfolding?
Yeah, I think it's almost an imperative that if you're arming every employee with insights and data, they're going to make better decisions. And so, from just purely from a competitive perspective, I think you almost have to do it. And it was really accelerated last year, particularly in the last 18 months or so with the pandemic. I think it became at the forefront that companies wanted more data driving their decision making, and things were moving super fast. So we've seen that adoption kind of accelerate, and there being more of a readiness to understand that ultimately transformation in the business is driven by a data transformation. So I think there's a resurgence of it. That's one pattern that we're seeing. And then secondly is this essentially a democratization, that point of get it in front of as many users as you can across the business so that they're armed. We've enjoyed this in our personal lives, I think, as consumers.
Right.
We've enjoyed a sort of revolution in how smart the applications we use are. You know, moving from a paper map to a MapQuest to a Waze or a Google Maps and getting, a prediction on when we're going to arrive at our destination and what the optimum route is, and then that being responsive to changing conditions. It's kind of analogous to putting insights in the hands of every user across the business, so that they're taking better decisions and faster ones actually as well.
Yeah, it seems like one of the issues in terms of that trend is how easy or how hard the software is to use. I know that some applications pride themselves on being really robust, but you have to be a data scientist to interface with it. Other applications are more democratic by their nature. They're a little more user friendly. I say this not because you work for Tableau. My sense of Tableau is it is more user friendly than some of the applications out there. I realize I'm giving you a softball, but does that make sense, or am I just making that up?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Tableau was the inception of Tableau, and the goal was to democratize visual analytics, right, across the organization, and to make it a really engaging, fun, fast experience, driven by this visualization layer. And so it absolutely did that. It creates now, however, an opportunity to sort of move beyond that real, what I consider to be more of a power user, that data professional, into the long tail of the business, that, if you like, the general business user, bringing them sort of a similar but different experience so they can make decisions with data as well.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about Tableau's suite of new and expanded tools. What do you think is most noteworthy about what's new?
Well, I'd classify it in under the heading of augmented analytics. So there are four things about, if you don't mind me talking
No,
about all of.
please do it. And let's,
Yeah.
even though we may all know the term augmented analytics, let's do a short 101 explanation of what that is, just so everyone
Yeah,
really knows
absolutely.
what is augmented
I
analytics.
could probably go. We could probably spend 20 minutes on this.
I
The
bet.
concept's been in the market for quite some time, right? Augmented analytics,
Hmm.
and for me, it's all about bringing AI techniques to the job of doing analytics, and that really surfaces in a couple of different ways. Number one, I think it allows us to get to more people. So you create an experience that's different. It's AI powered, and it gets to more people.
Hmm.
And then secondly, there's this concept of, at least in my head, there's a concept of machine plus human, where
Hmm.
you can do more with augmented analytics because you're going to bring machine power to crunch and analyze and look for patterns in lots of data and do so in a very comprehensive way across the board. So we've got a couple of capabilities that focus on, we've got capabilities in our augmented analytics suite that do both of those things.
Does that mean, just to drill down a little bit, that the analytics program is spitting out a certain amount of results? It's showing the results in a graph, in some sort of visual graph form, but those results are more refined because an ML algorithm has helped refine them more, or how does that work exactly?
Yes, somewhat yes. The first and for I think critical point is that it's in context for that user.
Hmm.
So if you were to try and create specific dashboards for that user's context, you'd be on a very long journey. You'd be in a never-ending sort of dashboard factory mode.
Sure.
So what Augmented can do there is really tailor it for the user and deliver it them in such a way that solves for their user experience. So natural language questioning, NLQ,
Hmm.
that we surface with Ask Data and also with Ask Data for Salesforce is a great example of this, where like more casual business user, they can answer their question, they can pose their question in natural language. It won't necessarily be well formed for how we've structured or captured data,
Hmm.
and we have to do the job of answering the question effectively anyway.
Hmm.
So their vernacular, their use of language is going to be different depending on where they're coming from and just how they refer to parts of the business. That doesn't
Right.
always reflect itself in your data model, your semantic layer. So the NLQ pieces have to handle that, but it's very approachable. Search-based analytics in the form of Ask Data is super approachable for that casual business user who wants insight quickly, but perhaps is not going to go through the time of finding the right dashboard, and does that dashboard actually answer their question in the right way?
Oh, it actually helps the user. It makes it more user friendly for the user.
It does, and it's actually a virtuous cycle because if you have your telemetry, then you're capturing what the user input
Hmm.
and how and whether it landed the right answer for them.
Hmm.
So that is actually, if you think about that, that's actually you're capturing data as an exhaust to go and train better models that drive the experience. So there's this recursion, there's this reinforcement process. The more it gets used, it's going to do better for a particular business context over time.
Right. Right. It's going to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's in essence, yeah, yeah.
all right. I didn't want us to get derailed on talking about the new releases. Please go ahead on that front if you're ready.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of touched on it there. There's a couple, I'll organize it around in two sets of capabilities. So
Hmm.
again, on the notion of empowering more people, you've got Ask Data, which has been out for quite some time with Tableau. And what's happened in the most recent release is that it's been made available for all the viewers. So it's available as a component that you can drop onto a dashboard. And for viewers who are those more casual consumers of analytic assets, previously it was in for explorers and creators. So it was a little bit more upstream, a bit closer to that other audience we talked about. So
Right.
that's one of the highlights of the new Ask Data. Second is Ask Data for Salesforce. And this is a similar concept, works a little bit differently because it's operating inside the CRM. And so that's working on a kind of on the basis of a graph technology that's capturing metadata from the CRM.
Hmm.
So it's answering natural language questions in a similar way, but they're directed, the answers and the queries that are generated, or the access to the existing dashboards or lenses or reports, whatever it's going to show up, Those are driven by metadata that it's captured from the CRM. So that's very specific to Salesforce because we have the luxury of tracking the what's going on in the CRM from a metadata perspective. Ask data is focused more broadly across analytics across the enterprise within Tableau.
Interesting.
So that's the first category. And then the second category is this kind of machine plus human concept. And again, some innovations that have, or some new developments, I should say, here. Number one, explain data. This has also been around for a while. And explain data uses statistics and machine learning right on the fly to explain a point on your chart. You see an anomaly, you see a really odd distribution of data, you see a number that you don't understand. You ask explain data to do exactly that, explain it. What's driving this thing? And it looks broadly across the data set using the statistics at that moment to try and answer that question. So what are the driving factors? So explain data has extended also similar to ask to all the viewers. So again, it was previously focused on the power user, now available for all of the viewers in the Tableau environment. And then
one feature, if I may ask a question about that one, which is a fascinating feature. So for example, there's a trucking company looking at the software, and it's usually, 500, it requires 500 trucks to carry this one load. Suddenly 1 month it requires 1,100 trucks, and someone wants to know, why does it we need 1,100 trucks? They could suddenly click on this, and in theory, the ML widget or a feature would explain why it suddenly needs 1,100 trucks instead of 500 trucks that month?
Yeah, it's going to look for statistical signal in the data that's available to it broadly across the whole data set, not just what you've used in that dashboard.
Okay.
And see whether there are other drivers. Was there a change in the macroeconomic status, or were there weather changes? Right, there were demand signals that were coming through. So it's looking at whatever data you've presented to and is available inside that Tableau context will be inspected statistically and has to do it almost, does it do it real time and give back a result.
All right, great.
And then the last one to call out is called Einstein Discovery for Reports. And again, this is switching back into the core CRM world where millions of users every month run operational reports on their CRM, looking at their pipeline or looking at their caseload and what their backlog is, that kind of thing. And one of the most heavily used features of Salesforce is operational reporting and analytics. And what we've done here is add a similar concept. It's that machine assist alongside the report that you specified to say, what's going on here? What are the drivers of an outcome I'm interested in? So if I'm trying to maximize first call resolution on a case, what are the drivers that we can find in the data that are present in that report that explain it? Similarly, our pipe level, we're looking at pipeline of business, and trending that over time. What are the statistical drivers in the data? So we're using, in that case, machine learning techniques to look across the whole data, and then also look for something called interaction terms, which is where you've got multiple variables working together. So California plus the month of July, is there a specific pattern in that little subset of data? So it's doing that comprehensively. Again, this is my notion of machine plus human. The machine can do way more really fast to inform the human. And then the human says, well, that's counterintuitive, or I knew this already, or that's really interesting, I want to explore further. And then monitor it over time. So if I looked at that report today, and then I run it tomorrow morning and my pipeline has gone down or something, what happens? What explains that change? So again, bring the machine to do that work, and then let the user kind of, as they're willing and able, go deeper into exploration and building out analytics and machine learning models on the data. So it's kind of an on-ramp as well as a huge assist to what's going on in my report data. And that's called Einstein Discovery for Reports.
It's so interesting, the idea of a machine-assisted data analytics program, and how, that by necessity, that is certainly going to be worlds ahead of a data analytics program that does not have that machine assist.
Yeah, I believe so. I think they're so complementary. We're not moving away from the person, right? The person, however, is they bring their business acumen, their knowledge of the semantics that the machine doesn't have, and they're ultimately interpreting its whatever it's showing them. And so this is always about the human ultimately making a decision or informing their next set of questions. But the machine is really, I think it's just it's an accelerant. You can get there faster and you can be more comprehensive in your analysis by using the machine.
The other thing that really strikes me about that is that I've always thought of data analytics and a company that uses and makes good use of data analytics. It's a serious competitive advantage for them.
Right.
But now it seems like, no, it's not enough to be using data analytics. You need to be using data analytics that is machine and AI assisted. Otherwise, you're going to be falling behind. So it's really, that becomes a serious competitive advantage.
I think so. There's one of our chief futurist, Peter Schwartz, talks about not the fear of the machine taking the job, but the fear of his competitor is using the machine and their skill, right, in doing their job, and they're going to do it more effectively. I think in general, humanity has been pretty effective at inventing machines that make us more productive.
Right.
And we're more efficient, we're productive, we get done. I don't know whether we're just fundamentally lazy, but
I am. I don't know about you, but okay.
Ultimately, we do a great job of that, and and AI, some of the AI techniques definitely fit for me in that bucket of we can automate certain parts of it, and we'll just be more productive, and we'll hopefully get to work on the fun things that require that human knowledge and sense and the empathy and things like that. The machines are terrible at.
Oh yeah, really. Well, I guess I'd love to get your sense of where you see us going in the years ahead. Say, by the time we get to the middle of the decade, you think about data analytics platforms, what's going to be going on? What's a milestone you see happening? What's your take?
I think, I don't know whether I'm going to pick a milestone in terms of any kind of date, but I think there's a notion of ubiquity is that the analytics is there even if you don't know that it is, and it feels completely natural that it's there. So it's informing your decision making, but not in an intrusive way. Certainly for that general business user we've been talking about, in terms of really, ultimately an augmented consumer. I think there's a trend in the market towards a clear trend towards the consumer being empowered with data. And in order to do that, you really have to do augmented analytics. So you have to rethink a little bit how you deliver to them. And so I think that's where it's going. I think there are elements of automation for sure, especially in some of the repeat elements of business processes. But I don't think that takes over the work of the individual. I think it really is a companion to them. It's insights along how they're doing their work, and it just ultimately becomes a smarter, more sticky experience using any application. Again, whether you're in a CRM or whether you're in a collaboration application or whether you're, I don't know, planning or forecasting the business or whatever you might be doing. That's how I see it coming to fruition.
Really interesting. So it's to be clear on the idea of ubiquity. So really any application that someone might be using in the enterprise could have a machine-assisted data analytics built into that application. Am I hearing you right there?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly where we're going, and have been for some time. And I think it just moves the bar higher. So why you will demand that? It's like the features on a premium vehicle flowing down over time to the more standard versions.
Right.
So you didn't get air conditioning and Apple CarPlay with this version of the vehicle this year. Next year you do.
Right.
So I think it sort of progressively sets the bar higher for what the user experience is like in their applications. And I certainly think, going back to this notion, I think the consumers in our consumer lives, we've got used to that. It's very personalized and responsive and smart, a lot of the applications that we use. And I do think areas of the enterprise have the opportunity to catch up there a bit.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be just following it. It's going to be really fascinating in the years ahead, especially in terms of the machine assist. Phil, I think you said it. It was fascinating. I definitely learned something. Thank you very much.
You bet. My pleasure, James. Really enjoyed it.